Previously on Podcast Without Pretense.
You know, I really liked the movie Pixels when it was just that Futurama episode.
Why are you yelling? You know I'm on the show now.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I haven't listened to Toni Braxton in forever.
Good times, that episode.
That was a prophetic episode, seeing as how we had to listen to Toni Braxton a lot recently.
So welcome to Podcast Without Pretense. I'm Ayaz Akhtar.
I'm Jonathan Strickland.
And I'm Eric Sandine.
And together, we're going to inspire you and create a spiritually healing environment through friendship and brotherhood and unlikely sets of circumstances. But first, we have to shoot like 4/5 of a family to death.
Well, I thought what we were going to do is we're going to test the faith of our listeners and viewers. We're going to make them question all things, and they will be so shocked by what happens on this show that they won't be able to talk for like months, or like, sorry, not months, for like days. And they will take on a pseudonym very easily.
So we do this thing on this show. We might as well get the movie out of the way first, right?
Do it.
Yeah.
We do this thing on this show where we watch movies in an attempt to test our attention spans. Usually they are bad movies. And we just the goal is to watch it without any other distractions, no second screens, no other people, no alcohol, just to see how much of our attention we can devote to these sort of things. And like I said, normally we pick really bad movies. We look on Netflix for things that are already ranked super low. And thus it's kind of a torture for us. And there are no winners here. No one wins if they watched it, endured more than anyone else. It just tells us more about our own ability to devote our attention to one thing. But this time was a little different in that Ayaz had a chance to pick a movie, and Ayaz has been on a lifetime movie viewing spree for some inexplicable reason.
Well, it's also been for years, by the way. It's not a spree. I've been watching Lifetime movies since quite regularly since about 2006, 2007. So yeah, it's been a long fucking time.
This has been a deep, dark, shameful secret that Ayaz has hidden from the world until recently. And then Eric and I chided him, saying that he has to save one of these for us to watch for Podcast Without Pretense. And he picked one. And the weird thing was, for all three of us, Netflix predicted we would really enjoy this movie. If not like it, perhaps even love it. And the movie was Twist of Faith. And so first, I guess we need to see how far each of us got in the film before we allowed ourselves to have some kind of distraction. And I'll go ahead and go first. In my case, it was about 28 minutes in, and then I got a phone call. So I paused the movie, answered the phone call, and then decided from that point forward, I'm just going to have a second screen so I can start taking notes. And then I went and watched the rest of it from there. What about you guys? Ayaz?
I made it 44 minutes and 49 seconds. Liz was sitting next to me on the couch. I eventually found her distracting, so I'm like, that counts. And then I was like, oh, you know what I'll do now? I got a computer. I can take a look at notes. I can mess with my lights because I have little hue lights, and that's why I decided 44 minutes. How about you, Eric?
I made it 41 minutes in.
Excellent. I think I probably could have made it I certainly could have made it further in if I had not had the phone call. But I wasn't so enamored of the film that
it wouldn't have been worth it.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if there had not been an interruption, I would have kept going longer. But otherwise, it's like there's no point in trying to keep going. So I took 2 full typed pages of notes on this one. And I've got essentially the whole synopsis. Do you guys want me to kind of go through it, and then you can pipe up whenever need be, or how do you want to do this?
I think that's a good idea. What do you think, Eric?
That sounds fine to me.
All right. Now, I want to first explain that I didn't bother to ever learn some characters' names.
All right, I can help with that because I usually write that stuff down. So go ahead.
Okay. So story follows essentially 2 people. Toni Braxton plays a single mother who is the solo vocalist in her church's choir. So what's her character name? Is it
Nina Jones.
Nina Jones. All
Nina
right.
Jones.
For the purposes of this synopsis, every time I say Toni Braxton, substitute that with Nina Jones. Or don't. I don't give a shit. All right. The choir has an upcoming gospel competition against a rival church that always beats them. Which, side note, this just seems kind of weird to me that there are gospel competitions.
Yeah.
Simply because it seems it's treading awfully close to the sin of pride.
I thought that was odd too. Like, you know, when it opens and there's this weird gospel competition and they have to win, they have to beat the other ones. I'm like, it's just strange. Is that a thing?
I quite love that idea. I was hoping this is gonna be like Bring It On or like that Pitch Perfect movie. And if I get to pick another movie one day, I hope it centers around the plot of like a pie baking contest, because you got to have a contest, or this makes no sense.
You have an obsession with pie, my documentarian friend.
I gotta finish that.
So, at any rate, I do think it's just odd to have any kind of competition. Because, I mean, what are you essentially saying? Like, we can praise his name through song better than you can? Like, it just seems odd to me. But maybe it's just because I am not a person of faith, and I just can't appreciate it. I will admit to that. That's quite the possibility. So, meanwhile, in Brooklyn, which has Jews in it, a Jewish man is teaching Hebrew at a Jewish school. Whenever they have any of the Jewish characters on screen, the film not so subtly reminds us that they're Jewish.
Oh, I have my favorite line. I wrote down my favorite line for that one.
I've got a bit about it too, but it's like in big bold letters. Like whenever it goes to those characters, it's like, remember, they're Jewish. It's ridiculous. So he also does carpentry and does repairs around the place. And he has a wife and 3 kids. So he has a son and 2 daughters. One day, his family gets on a bus, and a tweaked-out drug user gets offended that the eldest daughter won't accept candy from him. The bus driver comes back to throw off the freeloading tweaker when said druggie pulls out a gun, shoots the bus driver, then turns the gun on Jacob's family. Jacob's the Jewish guy. And he kills all of them. So all 4 of them, before presumably killing himself. Now, that means that he is a very effective shot because he's using a revolver. He shoots the bus driver. Then he shoots the 4 members of Jacob's family, leaving him the 1 bullet left.
Okay.
Commit suicide.
So before we move on from this, very pivotal scene,
Yeah.
couple things. First of all, everybody who gets on the goddamn bus, nobody pays. Not a single person uses a Metro card. I don't see any tokens. And I don't know what part of Brooklyn doesn't charge for the fucking bus. So I don't know how everybody got on the bus in the first place. Then the tweaked out drug user who shows up in the back, the reason why the bus driver gives him shit is because he didn't pay. I'm like, well, nobody fucking paid. Why is he giving this person shit? Then, if you want to know about the effectiveness about the shooter, who is an asshole for killing these people, the mom decides, who was unnamed at this point, decides to try to protect her kid. So I'm going to assume that the bullet went through the mom a couple times, because I think he shot in that area a couple times. So the littlest one was probably shot between mom and her. So maybe he's not the best shot, or these kids are just not very resilient. That's a terrible thing to say. But they all fucking die, and Jacob's kind of pissed. Continue.
Well, yeah, he's completely destroyed, which makes perfect sense, right? So, first of all, this horrific moment, and I know I'm making, we're kind of treating it lightly, but it's because it is so ridiculously over the top. Like, it reminds me of the heavy-handedness of the old, school bus safety videos, blood on the highway, that kind of stuff that you would see when you were a kid in elementary school, where it'd just be like, people who really deep in their hearts wanted to make a great horror movie, but first to work their way there, they have to make these little PSA type films. And so they just pour their heart and soul into making it as grisly as possible. That's
They
kind of
also-
how I felt about this.
Yeah, it was just the weirdest scene because it's like, okay, we need a plot device because we need this guy, to be sad and broken up, right? And so who in the writer room was sitting there going, okay, let's have a druggie on a bus and he'll shoot the entire family.
By the way, there's
Yeah.
no actual, like, we never see the family get shot. We see the point of view of the shooter. We do see him shoot the bus driver. Eventually he shoots where the family was, and then you do see him put a gun under his own chin. So it's not gory by any means, and they don't show you, like, dead children, which would have been pretty horrific. But it was quite shocking, because it's like, wait a minute. We just have
also
Toni
like-
Braxton's life. She's pretty chill. Oh, let's go to Brooklyn. Let's shoot people now. They're all dead. Let's kill 3
also
kids.
It's like 5 minutes into the movie too, or maybe like 10 minutes. Like it's right off the top. Like
We have just enough time with the family to know that Jacob is a devoted family man. He loves his family, and they're all Orthodox Jews, and they observe the Orthodox Jewish faith very closely. So Jacob obviously is completely destroyed by this, almost catatonic, honestly, which is, again, perfectly understandable. At this point while I'm watching it, I was kind of, the synopsis said a Jewish man in the wake of tragedy rediscovers his faith. And I knew something tragic was going to happen, and I presumed it was going to be that he was going to lose his family. Didn't think it was going to be to a shooter. I thought that was particularly grisly and awful. But yeah, we don't really get a chance to get to know his family, which might be for the best, because I think it would have made the movie far more grim than it already was at the beginning. So anyway, he becomes unresponsive to others. He decides that after the funeral, presumably, of his family, he leaves behind everything, like his wallet, his wedding ring, his phone, pretty much anything that had his identification is left behind. I guess he has some cash in his pocket, though, because he goes to a bus depot and takes a bus that's southbound.
Okay, wait a second here. Wait. Can somebody please tell me how, after this guy sees his family getting shot on a bus, his preferred mode of transportation from Brooklyn, not like you get a fucking Amtrak or something, why the hell would you take a bus? Wouldn't you kind of be, I don't know, slightly freaked out about getting on a bus? Now, granted, it's not a city bus. It's a Greyhound style bus or whatever the hell it's going to be. Did anyone else find that's kind of strange? That he's like, well, I'll take a bus.
Maybe that was his attempt to commit suicide. Maybe he just thought that's what happens to people on buses now.
I have the same note. What the hell? He just got on a bus. That's like my note for that scene.
Well, at any rate, we then have a montage of him traveling and working in various places to make ends meet, so that he can go travel some more. And he eventually ends up in mid-Alabama in some unnamed, as far as I can tell, rural town.
It's Brent, Alabama, and they do name it at the
Brent.
very beginning. So during the credit sequence at the beginning,
it's there.
Yeah, one of the annoying things is they didn't actually do a good enough job of discerning the fonts. So like the font of here's the actor's name, and then you see Brent, Alabama. I'm like, who the hell's Brent, Alabama? I'm like, oh wait, that's the place that this movie's taking place in. It's also it's in the lower third, so they should have kind of changed the font or maybe changed the color so you had an indication that you were now looking at a location. But Brent, Alabama, it is.
There you go. Okay. So he ends up at Brent, Alabama. He's asleep next to the church, which is right next to Toni Braxton's house. Toni Braxton has a precocious child named Asher. Asher, right?
Yeah.
Asher is correct.
He's really concerned with being a good Christian, and he wants to help out the now mute Jacob. Eventually, Toni Braxton's uncle sneaks Jacob into the church, her uncle Mo, to stay the night. Jacob repays the kindness by straightening up the caretaker's office, which had been just completely in shambles and now is incredibly neat. And so he and Mo enter an arrangement. The silent Jew shall remain in the church doing work as long as he stays out of sight. So Jacob overhears the chorus practicing, and he's moved emotionally by the music. Toni Braxton finds out Jacob is staying at the church, and she has a shit fit. She's talked down by Mo and the pastor through the use of Matthew 25, the verse Matthew 25, which she cannot believe is thrown in her face, despite the fact she doesn't know what the verse is.
Well,
We
yeah,
know we know this because she has to go and look it up later.
the title. I already wrote it down. Like, this is the title of the episode. It has to be. Don't be Matthew 25ing me, is what she says to the pastor and her Uncle Mo. And Uncle Mo, by the way, played by the guy who played Bubba in Forrest Gump. I'm like, I know this guy. He's Bubba. It's Bubba, who's he plays Uncle Mo. And Uncle Mo is very trusting. And by the way, what Jonathan is saying about the deal that they have struck between Jacob and Mo, it's not like Mo was saying, hey, silent Jew, stay quiet in the church. It was such that the guy, Jacob, didn't really say anything. So he kind of nodded his head and kind of did that thing. So it's not as bad as just saying, shut up and sit down over there.
No, Jacob is silent by his own choice. He is not ready to talk with other people. It's clear that he's just knowing to the point where he can interact with people beyond agreeing to do some manual labor or whatever. And so this is where we get the first of the wisdom of Uncle Mo moments, where he says, he's describing Jacob. He says, he's like a broken saltine cracker.
Yeah, people are like broken saltines. If you're too rough with them, they'll turn into crumbs.
That's the wisdom of Uncle Mo. There will be more wisdom of Uncle Mo later. So Toni Braxton hears Jacob play piano, and I guess that's the moment she becomes convinced he's not a psycho killer waiting to snap, because psycho killers don't play piano. Up to that point, Toni Braxton was very wary of Jacob. She doesn't trust that he is safe or not a crazy person. She keeps telling her son to stay away from him. Her son all the time is saying, but the Bible tells us that we need to take care of one another. And she says, look, the Bible was written in a safer time. And I'm thinking, no, not really.
Yeah, I have that line written down too.
Yeah.
What am I
so at any rate, so Asher is trying to be the compassionate Christian. Toni Braxton's trying to be much more practical and pragmatic. And Uncle Mo is kind of in between the two of them, although he's more on the side of Asher than than Toni Braxton. So then the uncle starts talking. The silent Jew finally speaks again at around minute 33. He says thank you when Toni Braxton offers him some clothing she was going to donate to the church. Toni Braxton starts to take notes on Jacob, observing him, kind of spying on him. And the first three notes are carpenter, religious, because she sees him pray before he eats, and coach, as in like a sports coach, because he plays with Asher and helps him play basketball. His own son was interested in playing basketball before being brutally murdered on the bus. Then she adds the note city boy, because he doesn't know how to change a spare tire. Don't change a tire. And then Toni Braxton's uncle takes Jacob hunting.
Wait, did nobody enjoy the fact that there was a carpenter whose first name began with a J hanging out in a church? Anybody?
And he's Jewish.
Yeah, anybody? I was just like, hey, that's pretty funny. And then,
when she started writing that stuff down, they went nowhere with it, really.
Yeah.
I was really hoping for a lot more. Like ice skater, walks on water. Like just keep pushing it. Like, come on. Give me
always seems to have wine on him.
I wish
fish and bread. He's got fish
hanging
and
out
bread up the wazoo.
Well, his last name was Fisher, so
that's true.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Jacob balks at the thought of using a rifle, which is again understandable. His family had been killed by a shooter. Then the uncle shoots a poor defenseless bunny rabbit and then laughs about it.
Oh, wait a second. Can we talk about where the rifle was? Okay. The rifle is in the caretaker's room at the church, where Jacob was allowed to stay before Jacob spoke or did anything to make himself look like a nice guy, other than taking a sandwich from a boy. So Jacob is in a room. He decides to, he organizes the room, basically touches everything that there is in this bedroom, including
the case that holds
an unlocked gun case that he puts on the top shelf. So they trusted Jacob with a gun that was ready to go, or at least the ammo was nearby, because there doesn't seem to be any issue finding the ammo. Maybe there's some kind of safety there that I missed, but they let the stranger stay with the gun across the way from Uncle Mo, Nina, and Asher. Seems like a big hole there.
To be fair, Uncle Mo's the one who shoots rabbits and then laughs about it. So they're already used to dealing with a fucking psychopath. They're related to one. They're like, we can deal with this.
Oh, yeah, so Uncle Mo's like, if he comes at me with the rifle, I'll have the semi-automatic I have under the pillowcase.
I've got this mortar sitting behind the house. So then I've got Jacob refuses to pick up the rifle, and the uncle is taken aback. Like, I can't believe this guy won't shoot rabbits. So then the uncle starts talking about skinning the rabbit while skinning it. And here's where we get the wisdom of Uncle Mo again. What proves you a man is getting these guts out of that thing. Wisdom of Uncle Mo.
Yep.
Then everyone has a wholesome laugh around the rabbit carcass.
Well, wait a second. They were trying to figure out how to not breathe in the smell, and they were holding their nose and talking. And Uncle Mo, who does not appreciate Nina, Jacob, who's now known as Sam, I think, at this point still.
Yes.
And Asher, he does not appreciate he's being made fun of. He decides that he's going to take the smell to the kitchen, which I would think would be a bad thing because they were outside. So the smell should be dissipating a lot faster than it would in a kitchen. So that's where that goes.
Yeah. Then we get to the point where it is Asher's birthday, and they debate on inviting Sam, which is the name they know Jacob by, as I has said. It's revealed that it's been almost a month since Jacob showed up. And he's been carving something and decides that that's going to be Asher's present. It ends up being a sphere inside of a kind of a prism type wooden structure, so you can roll the sphere back and forth within it. It's all been carved from one piece of wood. And then in a conversation with Mo, Jacob reacts to someone else yelling the name Jacob. It's a mother yelling it to her son, but he quickly reacts, which then clues Mo into what Jacob's real name is. And then Mo immediately tells Asher and Nina, or Toni Braxton, as I prefer to think of her.
It's funnier just to call her Toni Braxton anyway.
Yeah. And so they're at Asher's birthday party. Asher is apparently the most popular kid in Brent, Alabama. His birthday party is attended by his mom and his uncle.
Yep.
And that's it.
And his favorite food is corn.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a crazy time in Brent, Alabama. So they say that Jacob's not going to come to the party. And Jacob, of course, comes to the party just as they're about to say grace. So they ask him to say grace, which he does eloquently, which then impresses Toni Braxton even more. So he's winning over Toni Braxton bit by bit. Jacob then sends a letter off once he is assured that it won't be postmarked from the town, because the town is so small, the postmark doesn't indicate the town. It just goes from Birmingham, Alabama, which is the largest sorting center nearby. So he sends a message back to his family. Toni Braxton says, "Stay out of my business," to Jacob after Jacob asks her about what happened between her and her ex-husband. She says, "Stay out of my business." Now, this is from the woman who's been spying on Jacob this whole time and taking notes.
Well, to be fair,
hypocrisy to pride.
to be fair, he was sleeping at the church, which is across, like, she could see him from the window because the church and her home are about 20 feet apart. Okay. And so this guy's kind of close by. He is hanging out with her son. But yes, I also found it very odd how angry and how quick she is to be like, it's none of your business. It's like, now, you could just say, like, I'd rather not talk about it, because this guy's been, like, at the birthday party. He's like, why is it? He
probably knows he has access to a gun.
I will say this, though. I will say this. It makes sense in this respect. When we find out later why she got divorced from her husband, we realize that she still carries a huge amount of guilt, and she blames herself for what has happened. And it really is realistic that people who blame themselves for something can strike out at others because they don't want to get to that point where they have to admit that they had wronged somebody else. So
don't you inject logic to this?
No, at the time when I was watching it, I was just like, oh, come on. But as the story unfolded, I thought, you know what? I can actually forgive this part now because it makes sense within the context of what we find out later. So in this case, I'm ready to say the movie did this correctly because it makes her a very human person. And a lot of the movies we watch, people don't have any logical or even human kind of way of reacting to things. And this was a very human reaction.
As far as our movies go, yes, this was well done.
I don't mean to say that I liked it or that I thought it was good, but it rang true. So there's that. All right. And we'll get to her reasons in a little bit. So we then get to the moment where she immediately comes back. This, you get the feeling that some time has passed, but in the movie, it's one scene right after the other. She comes back to Jacob to tell him what actually happened between her and her ex-husband. So she had just said, stay out of my business. Scene ends. Next scene begins. She's like, all right, here's what happened. And she reveals that she got married to her husband. Like it was her childhood crush. They were teenage sweethearts. They got married right out of high school. She had Asher, and she was feeling overwhelmed and unhappy. And she went out with her friends, met a guy. Apparently they had a fling, although that part is really glossed over.
Yeah, unclear.
Yeah. I mean, the presumption is that she must have gone and had a one-night stand with this guy, because otherwise, if she just chatted with a guy in a bar, yeah, you might say like that was a slip in judgment, but it's not exactly something you would get divorced over. Even
she says
rural Alabama.
She's like, she goes out with friends. They'd been drinking, and then there was this guy, and then her friend told Mike about it, and then wait,
her ex-husband. Yeah.
We're like, wait a second. That's pretty much the way the dialogue goes in the movie. By the way, I didn't skip anything.
So we have to say that there was probably a moment where she's like, oh, and I boned him. Like that was probably in the script but got cut some reason. Maybe it was just the show was running too long. So let's just throw in the and I boned him part. And she was going to go and tell her husband about what had happened, but one of her friends had done it first, which tells you the quality of friendship in this town. And it leads to the divorce. And she has not told Asher what had happened because she's deeply ashamed of what she had done. She still feels this sense of shame and guilt. And Jacob tries to counsel her, but it's clearly a very tough subject. And he comforts her by referencing the Bible. He references Psalms. And they have a moment. And she's impressed that he can quote from the Bible from memory because she can't remember Matthew 25. So clearly being able to remember biblical verses is a superpower. Now, this is the part, this has my favorite exchange of the entire film in this section. And I tweeted about it, and I think I posted on Facebook about it too, because I loved it so much. So Jacob had left behind some members of his family, like I guess it was his sister and his mother.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Yeah. So back in Brooklyn, Jacob's sister visits Jacob's mother, so their mother, with she's brought the mail, and she says, I got your whitefish from Edelman's. And the mother says, I still haven't finished the lox from Sunday, just in case you've forgotten that they're Jewish.
I had to write that line down too. That was probably my favorite thing in the movie. I actually burst out laughing when that happened.
I saw that Facebook post from you, Strickland, before I saw this movie, because I saw this movie tonight, and I was just waiting for it. I'm like, who's gonna say it? When's it gonna happen? And then it did. It felt like, when you watch a movie and they say the title of the movie and you're like, that's the thing. It's like, oh, there it is. I was so happy when I finally saw it. So
the only
ridiculous.
thing that would have been less subtle is if a big Jew sign just started shining on the screen.
Yeah, like the bat signal, just this big star David, just
and this is the point where I feel like the movie really is insulting our intelligence, right? I mean, it's just like I have no problem, by the way, with the premise of the film necessarily, or any of the different character choices or anything like that. But this presentation is so ham-fisted that it's an insult to my intelligence.
Did you see who wrote, actually, who directed this movie?
No.
It was Amy Klein. It was like, shouldn't she have a less, I don't know, what's the word, heavy-handed method of explaining this? Because the other thing is, like, by the way, as much as we're like kind of making fun of the depiction and the dialogue, there's really not a hell of a lot of stuff that makes fun of the South in this movie. I mean, eventually we might get to some of it, but like it's fucking Alabama. Do you have any idea how easy it is to make fun of Alabama? And it never fucking happens.
Yeah.
Nobody ever mentions this.
Well, I don't feel like they're making fun of New
they're
York
using
or Brooklyn or Jewish people. It's just that it shows that they don't trust the audience to understand, and thus they need to have these incredibly heavy-handed cues to tell the audience who everyone is, and that's the part that I find insulting. I don't think that they make fun of New Yorkers. I mean, some of the Southerners have
the shooting on a bus. Come on.
They have to remind the
Uncle
viewers
Mo
that
shoots
he's Jewish.
and skins a rabbit as if that's a normal thing for Southerners to do, Ayaz. I have never shot or skinned a rabbit.
Wait, listen, you're in Georgia. That's a whole other state, okay? So who
It's
knows?
a state that's right next to Alabama.
Well, so what? New York's next to Jersey. That doesn't mean that there's a lot of, like, you know, similar ideas. Like, stuff ends at Staten Island. You know, like big hair and hoop earrings. That shit ends somewhere. Like, there has to be a line.
All right, Eric, I'm sorry. I interrupted you. What were you saying?
Oh, no, I was just saying that they have to remind you that he's Jewish because, you know, the Lifetime viewers might not remember through the commercial breaks.
That's true. That was one thing we didn't have to worry about. It would just fade to black and then come right back up. And
that was awesome.
Back in the story.
When I was watching the movie, I was just like, "Oh, good, I can get up and go to the bathroom." And I was like, "You're watching it on demand." But it literally does go fade to black. It's not like, oh well, we're gonna slightly re-edit it for the long release. No, just fade to black. Fade in.
Getting back into it, Jacob writes a religious song and practices it in the church, and Toni Braxton shows up. And they end up singing the song together. Toni Braxton is amazing at sight reading and being able to immediately do a harmony, which, honestly, she very well may be able to do that. Also, one thing that was kind of odd in this movie was that whenever anyone is singing, you know, they're clearly singing without any amplification in the context of the film, right? They don't have any microphones or anything, and yet their voices are very clearly processed. Like, you'll hear some reverb on some of the singing. Yeah. Like, it's and the lip syncing is not good in this movie.
The lip syncing, my first note was you'd think Toni Braxton would be better at lip syncing. Yeah,
she's not.
It's horrible.
Well, and to be fair, also these are songs that have lots of vocal runs in them. So a lot of that where they go through, like, essentially going through scales almost as they're singing a word, and that always makes it more difficult to lip sync because you're like, well, I can't just have my mouth open for this vocal run. I need to move my lips a bit, and it's very easy to err on the side of comedy, which this movie does frequently. So she then asks, oh, by the way, first of all, I said part of the song to me sounded like 3 Times a Lady. Like, as I was listening, I'm like, this sounds like once, twice, 3 times a lady, just for part of it. I don't know if that was just me imprinting that on the song or if it really was similar to it.
Are you calling Jacob a plagiarist? Is that what you're saying? And when Jacob was making this song up and he was working with Toni Braxton with it, he's just like, she might not know this progression. Is that what you're saying?
Far be it from me to impugn Jacob's sterling character. He is treated pretty much as if he's a saint in this movie. At any rate, so they've been talking. The church has been talking about what song they want to sing at the competition because the other church has beaten them so many times. And at one point, Toni Braxton had suggested "Let the Circle Be Unbroken." Fantastic song, by the way. I love gospel music. I truly do. But of course, it's revealed that the other church had won with that song back in the 90s, so it's off limits. So Toni says, "Hey, Jacob, how about we take this song you just wrote, have you adapt it for a chorus, and we'll use that in the chorus competition." And Jacob says, "Okay." And then next thing we know, the competition starts up. Like, I love that there's no delay here. We never see the choir practicing the song. We don't know that Jacob is actually going to join in and be part of the chorus. He's the only one not wearing a robe. By the way, did either of you notice that the robes they were wearing were not the same ones that were revealed earlier in the movie?
Yeah, they were inverted, right? Like originally they were going to wear like a white robe with like a purple sash, and then they moved it the other way.
It was going to be white with gold, and it ended up being white with purple. At the very beginning of the movie, they were shown like what their robes were going to look like, and they were white with gold, like a gold sash, and instead they were kind of a different white with purple when they were actually wearing it. The other chorus was wearing the purple robes with the gold accents, because the other church goes first.
Yeah, this is a Water of Life Baptist. And I think they're at a severe disadvantage. I was looking it up because thankfully I had my second screen at this point. I'm like, so Water of Life Baptist is up against a church that has a 7-time Grammy winner. Okay, yeah. She's has also 9 Billboard awards, and they've lost the past couple of years. So she's due for a win.
It's also a Baptist church against a Methodist church. In the South, that's a big deal.
And well, by the way,
speaking as someone who grew up Southern Baptist,
and to Jonathan's point about the whole like let's move really quickly in the movie. So Jacob's going to give the song, and we jump right to the finals of the Tri-County Choir playoffs,
gospel competition.
Thank you.
I think the sing-offs.
I like the sing-offs. It's for the sing-offs. So we just go right to the two teams. Yeah. I'm putting them as teams, they're not choirs anymore. They're just ready to go, and I'm just like, wait, because like Liz is like, wait, what?
They're playing Capture the Faith.
Liz is like, wait, what happened to the other choirs? Aren't there supposed to be more choirs? Like, no, we went right to the finals. So we just skip.
The finals happen to be in their church. Like,
yeah. Well, they talked about like at the very beginning, they talked about how it was a competition between the two churches. So presumably, they had already progressed through whatever other competitions there were. But it sounds to me like it always comes down to these two. So it was a very convenient little plot element. Anyway.
Who's judging this, by the way? Anyway,
it was 4 people. 4 people were judging. That's all we know.
Jesus. It was Jesus, Moses, Isaac, and Abraham. Those were the 4. So anyway, we get to, this is where I have a little thing about how the lip syncing is so bad. You really notice it during the competition sequence. I said the crowd walla after the first song is hilarious. This is the song by the competing church. Walla is the term for when crowds are making murmuring noises, like they're supposed to be talking but not really talking, so that you aren't too distracted. But it's the kind of stuff you would hear in like the classic case is the courtroom sequence, where something shocking has been revealed and you're in the background as everyone's murmuring. The walla in this movie after that song is hilarious because I counted at least 6 or 7 hallelujahs. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. That's awesome. I love it because usually it's rhubarb, 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 rhubarb. So it's odd how their unamplified voices sound like they've been processed. The chorus of oohs during the Jacob Toni Braxton song, the chorus starts to mimic singing the note ooh about 5 seconds before the actual oohs come into the song. So you see all these people going, but there's nothing. There's no music yet for them to sing. And I just thought, I guess they're all just inhaling, getting ready to ooh. So anyway, Toni Braxton's church wins the competition. Jacob sings with them despite not actually being a Methodist or Christian. But no one knows that yet, except for Jacob. Presumably, he knows it. Jacob asks out Toni Braxton after the competition, but she declines. And then we cut to that, presumably that night. Maybe it is at night. It may be not that night, but it is a nighttime scene. And two drunk white rednecks break into the black church and start to vandalize it. And this is where we get to the part about making fun of the South or indulging in Southern stereotypes. So we had the shooter in New York, and we have the two drunken rednecks who want to deface the black church. So now we've got our stereotypes in both the North and the South.
Yeah, I have my notes say the rednecks are coming, and like in all caps with a crowbar. At least they're drunk, which actually explains, you know what? Maybe even in the South, it's a bad idea. Maybe even in the North, when you're going to shoot people, you're like, I have to be out of my mind to want to do this. Because these two are pretty drunk, and they're like, oh yeah, we're just going to screw up this church. Which I never understood why anybody would want to do that. And then they start doing all kinds of things, like with the spray paint can. I'll let Jonathan continue.
Yeah, they spray paint over the church's portrait of the Last Supper. They spray alcohol or spit alcohol all over parts of the church. They're just generally being total assholes and damaging the church. Jacob overhears him. He reaches for the rifle. First time he's ever touched a gun.
Before we get to the rifle, I want to note some of the captions, which I enjoyed, that Liz pointed out. It was
you had captions turned on?
I almost always have them on. So one of the captions, while these two idiots are messing up the church, drunks laughing rowdily. I'm like, shit, that's a new podcast right there. And the next one was conversing in drunken gibberish. Another podcast right there. I'm like, the captions were amazing on this, because when Jacob starts playing that song way back, he's trying to figure out a song. It says plays sad song. It's like, oh, good. Now I know what to expect. See, he only hit 2 notes, so I didn't know if it was going to be happy or not. Play sad song. But yeah, so drunks laughing rowdily.
Closed captions tell you how to feel.
So awesome. Continue. Yes, Jacob's picking up a rifle.
All right, so yeah, he reaches for the rifle, which is a big deal because, of course, he had refused to shoot a rabbit earlier. That's when it goes to commercial. Comes back from commercial, and the drunks are still being drunk and vandalizing the church. Jacob creeps up, rifle in hand, but then he sets the rifle down out of sight. I guess he figures that it's not the right choice. And then he confronts the rednecks. One of the rednecks says, and I swear this is one of the lines in this movie, God is a white boy, all right, friend of the black man? That's what one of the characters says to Jacob.
This is after he sees Jacob, and he's like, one of the drunks says, we thought this was a black church. Yeah. And they were basically going to say like, oh, we're sorry, we thought it was a white church because you're white. We're just going to leave. So Jacob could have been like, yeah, it is. But he's like, no, you're right. It is a black church. So maybe Jacob should use some of that city boy smarts and be like, 2 drunk rednecks. Just agree with them and then make them leave. But
no, he has to teach them a life lesson because that's what he did when he was a teacher back in the Jewish school. He taught life lessons, and this is a teaching opportunity. It's also a beating opportunity, which is what the 2 rednecks take immediately and start to beat up Jacob using a baseball bat, among other things. And Jacob is slowly crawling back toward where the rifle is, but he's being beaten up. Toni Braxton rushes to Jacob's rescue, but they start to harass her. It looks like one of them is going to essentially sexually assault Toni Braxton. She is in danger of being raped. And so that's when Jacob picks up the rifle and threatens the 2 rednecks who say, oh, it's clear you don't know how to use that. And so one of them, it looks like they're not going to stop. Jacob shoots one of them in the leg. And then we magically fast forward to when the cops arrive. So we don't know what happens between the moment when he shoots the redneck in the thigh and still has the rifle pointed at the other redneck and when the cops arrive. Presumably they all just sat down and talked for a while. Yeah. Anyway, the police are magically there and they take the rednecks away, but they don't take away Jacob.
Right.
And the police say they are not going to press charges against Jacob. Now, I don't know how the law works in rural Alabama. But generally speaking, when someone shoots someone else, even if it is in self-defense, they're generally taken into police custody to at least answer a few questions before being released on their own recognizance or whatever. But this apparently is a different kind of community. So after recovering from their ordeal, Jacob and Toni Braxton kiss. But then Jacob suddenly gets sad because he feels guilt and shame because of his family, thinking that they have died far too recently for him to be able to move on like this. So he decides to leave without explaining anything to anyone else. He tells them that he's leaving at least, which is different from the beginning of the movie when he just picks up and leaves and doesn't tell anyone what's going on. So he says he's going to leave, but he doesn't explain why he has to leave. So Jacob walks off, presumably to go back home. He's just walking off into a field. And then we go back to New York. We see Jacob's mother. She's shopping at an outdoor market. Jacob walks up behind her and says, "Mom!" And they have a touching reunion. Back in Alabama, what?
Wait. Before we go back to Alabama, the scene where he decides to leave, and he's like apparently on the back porch or the back part of the house with Toni Braxton. And you're right, he's walking into a field, and it's apparently he's walking back to Brooklyn, which is fucking far from Alabama as far as I remember. My geography sucks.
He's walking back to get on his favorite mode of transportation, the bus.
Okay, but here's what makes no goddamn sense. As we saw in the beginning, and we will talk about at the end of the movie, there's a road out the front of the property and the church. So if he walks through the house,
that road only leads south to Florida. It doesn't go. You can't go north on that road.
Oh, that must be the problem I had, because the other thing is, like you said, he's walking in this field, and then we have like a jump cut, boom, he's in Brooklyn. No montage, like, okay, this is a long trip, or like, it's a long ass trip, especially if you're taking a bus from Alabama to Brooklyn. And he just,
where's he
it's like,
getting
boom.
money from at this point? Like, we haven't seen him work.
He pays in whittling. He's whittled this new guy a sphere in a cage, and the guy was like, awesome. He took him all the way to Brooklyn.
Yeah, because presumably he hasn't been paid for his work with the church. He's simply given a place to sleep and food to eat from Toni Braxton. Also, from this point forward, we have no way of knowing how much time is passing from one scene to the next. But as you point out, Ayaz, it takes a long time to get from Alabama to Brooklyn, particularly if you're traveling by bus. I mean, that's several days. And so the timelines of what happens next are all screwed up because, you're flashing between Brooklyn and Alabama. You're following Jacob's story and you're following Toni Braxton and Asher's story. And it doesn't match up from this point forward. Though, if you're really going to complain about that, after all the rest of the shit that you've had to sit through, I don't know what really your problem is. So I guess I don't know what my problem is. Anyway, so Jacob and his mother reunite in Brooklyn. Back in Alabama, the church prays in gratitude for Jacob's intervention. So apparently this is I guess this is the Sunday after all this has happened. So maybe he left on a Tuesday and this is Sunday. So they're praying in gratitude for Jacob's intervention saving Toni Braxton. Toni Braxton has to leave the church because she's overwhelmed by emotion and sadness that Jacob has left. In New York, Jacob visits his family's graves and breaks down crying, completely understandable. Back in Alabama, Toni Braxton is moping for Jacob but doesn't actually want to look for him. It's also irritating. So she's very much sad that he's gone, but she respects his decision for leaving and decides that it's best for her not to pursue this any further. However, her son and her uncle feel like they don't have this emotional barrier, so they're going to go ahead and try and interfere as much as possible. So Mo, the interference machine, decides he and Asher will have to do it instead. Back in New York, Jacob talks to his mother about his decision to run away. He apparently tells her the whole story, but this happens off screen. It goes back over to Alabama. When it comes back to New York, the mother's like, "You're too hard on yourself." It makes me wonder if he told her the whole story or if he left some important details out. At any rate, She advises him not to feel guilty about developing this emotional attachment to another woman, despite the fact that his family had died so recently, which makes me suspect that she never liked his first wife. Anyway.
Okay. Because Ruth's been dead for like a month. So like if we go with the stated timelines, because there's a lot of scenes where we just take the camera, we go up, we see the part of the church, the steeple, and we're seeing like clouds go by. They don't show multiple nights happening. It's usually like, okay, like 3 hours have passed. Like the way they show time passing,
it's a month and a half. It's a month and a half since she was
a month and a half. Ruth's been dead.
Because we are told at the very beginning that actually it might have even been 2 months, because aren't we told at the very beginning that the competition is 8 weeks away?
Yes.
I thought it was
so there you go.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
but you have 8.
It's 8 because it's 6 weeks. It's when they have the reveal of the robes, I think. At any rate, that's the only way we can tell time in this movie, is how many weeks away the competition is. And then the competition happens. So we know, okay, 2 months have passed since the beginning of the film. Anyway, back in Alabama, Mo tracks down someone who can read the mysterious language of Hebrew.
Well, wait, no, they don't act like that in the movie. They're like, I think that's Hebrew.
Bit.
Somebody else can confirm. Well,
they have to go to Birmingham to find someone who can read it.
Wait, Asher is the one who's like, I don't know what this means. And then Mo is like, I think that's Hebrew, but I'm not sure. Let's bring it to this other guy. He can confirm. That's the way they did it. They did not go like, what are the scribblings?
There's actually another step, though. They bring it to the other guy. The other guy, I think either the pastor or some other member of the church. They bring it to him. He brings it to another guy that we never meet.
Okay.
And then comes back and says, this guy I know told me what this says. So it required multiple steps. Now, let's be fair. It's rural Alabama. There's probably not a Jewish population in that town. There's very sparse Jewish population in the southeast. Even in the big cities, there are not the populations are relatively small. So it is entirely possible that it would have required this for someone to be able to read it, because it's not a common thing. So while I'm giving them a hard time, I doubt there was anyone from my hometown in Georgia who could read Hebrew.
Just the alternative would be hilarious.
Maybe some of the theologians, they might have been able to, because they might have taken that as a course in college.
The alternative would be like, what are these markings on this paper? I don't know, Asher. Let's go shoot some rabbits. So then the movie would have gone a totally different way. But thankfully, we know what it is.
Yeah, if the movie had just ended with characters holding their noses and laughing, I would have been like, this is the most weird film ever. So at any rate, they figure out that Jacob is Jewish from the fact that this is Hebrew writing. And that gives them the ability to start doing an actual search on Jacob to finally learn more about him. Because this whole time, Jacob has never revealed what has happened in his past to make him make this decision to essentially run away. And the search engine that the kid uses, did you notice what it was?
No.
Because I wrote it down.
Was it?
It was a fake search engine, and the URL was search.htm. That was the search engine.
So maybe this movie takes place in the future with a TLD of HTM.
It may be. So they discover what happened to Jacob's family. They decide that they will go to New York to track down Jacob. Mo seems obsessed with the idea of fresh drawers. He talks about fresh drawers. You got to have underpants. He says that about 3 or 4 times. You can still hear him, like it cuts outside when Asher runs out the house. You can still hear Mo going on about this inside the house. I'm like, well, that's kind of entertaining.
Also,
and of course,
that's amazing search engine foo that they're doing there, because searching for Jacob Jew is really probably going to bring up a lot.
They wrote Jacob, a carpenter, Jewish, basketball coach, Brooklyn, and I was like, okay, that's not going to work. And then Mo,
billion results.
Mo was like, do what your mom would do. Add these 2 words: crime suspect. He's like, no, but Jacob's really nice. He goes, just do it, try it out. Thankfully, since Jacob's family was shot up and destroyed on the bus, there's a post. And what I quite enjoy about this, by the way, is that the search result, is like the fourth or fifth one, which makes me really curious what the fuck the first three were. So he clicks
Wikipedia article.
He clicks at the fourth one, and it takes him right to a news site that has a full-on color picture of the family all together, and then up top saying, family slain. And I mean, that's pretty harsh, but like, just how quick this was found, how adding crime suspect worked, and again, how it was the fourth result. What?
I never used quotation marks.
Oh, no.
There was no Boolean logic applied to this search. Anyway, so they decide that they're going to go to New York, but before they can even pack, Jacob shows up outside the house. Jacob and Toni Braxton smooch and everything is okay. Hearts are healed. And Jacob can start his quest to build a synagogue in a rural Alabama town so that rednecks can persecute him too. The end.
Yeah, so my last note said it's been a month, 2 months, 3 kids, Ruth's dead, and now you're totally cool with this. It's like, I don't care if your mom's like, hey, you know what, son, be happy. Like, you might have a little bit of a holdover feeling that maybe you don't like leave Brooklyn again. When he gets to Brooklyn, it's like, oh, I have kids to teach you. I have to take care of them and this stuff. And he just fucking leaves again. He has responsibilities. He's already left for a month. What's he do to the kids? He's screwing them up. And then he comes down south like it's going to be okay. He shows up to the front of the house really easily because, again, that road only goes south. You're right. So I guess he just landed there because he's out at the front of the church. He's out at the front of the fucking house. And he's just like, shows up, they kiss, and the credits start. And it was like, you're kidding. You're kidding me. This movie moves at a snail's pace. The first hour and 5 minutes could have been 22 minutes and would have been just fine. It's one episode of a television show is what it could have been. And why the hell he's so cool with like, well, I'll just move to Alabama. And I guess, though, he kind of renounced his faith. If you guys didn't notice this, he gets a breakfast plate from Mo. And one of the first things he does when he gets the breakfast plate is he goes for the sausage. And I'm like, wait a second, man. That's pretty hardcore renouncing your faith. It's one thing to give up.
It could be beef sausage.
But he didn't ask any fucking questions. He's Orthodox. You got to say something. If you're Orthodox, you wouldn't be like, let me grab the sausage. I'm going to trust that Uncle Mo, who just he hasn't shot the rabbit.
Wait, Ayaz, how can we tell he's Orthodox Jew? It's not like the movie told us that every opportunity it had.
I must have made a mistake. I mean, it wasn't like he was wearing the hat and he had the curls or anything. He's just very religious.
The hat.
And never mind. No, not that hat. Sorry. I meant like the large black hat with the big brim. That you'll see a lot of Orthodox Jews in. Not a yarmulke. Excuse me. I meant
he did have the vest with the strings on it.
Yes, I don't know the official name of the strings. I didn't want to. I'm not trying to insult anybody. Yeah, but he leaves the strings at his home when he leaves with his wedding ring, his phone, and everything. It's like that's it.
The idea being that he's lost his faith, right? That he
absolutely
that he has reached this point where he cannot reconcile the idea of a God in a world where something so horrible would happen to innocent people. And that's actually a really interesting thing. And I honestly, I feel like this movie could have been really moving to me and really interesting to me had it been handled in a different way. But it was in such a almost cartoonish way that sort of minimized this kind of crisis of faith. And it felt more like a Hallmark kind of thing than anything else. That it wasn't effective. It didn't move me emotionally. Instead, I had this kind of jaded look at the film, and honestly, by the end of it, I don't know if he has converted to becoming a Methodist Christian.
That's what
which would involve more than just participating in chorus. I mean, he would have to sit there and fundamentally change his religious beliefs. But there's no indication of that has happened. So we really don't know what we don't know what the status of his faith is at the end of the movie. You presume that he has reconciled with God in some way. but you don't know if he's done it and still maintained his Orthodox Jewish beliefs, or if he has converted to Christianity. There's no indication that he has. And if he hasn't, moving to rural Alabama where there is no community there, it is really odd. I mean, the ending is incredibly satisfactory.
I was yelling at the end at Liz, and I'm like, "There's no fucking way you can like grow up in Brooklyn and then like go, I'm gonna live in Brent, Alabama. Like, why the fuck would you ever do that? He's a city boy, right? He can't change a tire. Oh, like Toni Braxton, maybe she could be a singer in New York. What a great fucking idea that would have been.
Here's the deal. The reason why you moved to Brent, Alabama is because it's not cool yet. So if you're from Brooklyn, moving to Brent, Alabama before it's cool has a huge motivational factor there.
Clearly, Jacob was a hipster.
Yeah.
Hipster, by the way,
hipster Orthodox Jew.
In an alternate world, Jacob does become the Punisher, which I did note at some point. I'm like, you know what? Punisher's family gets all shot up in the park. He goes out and tries to punish everybody. Jacob, he's like, fuck it. I'm going to go the Hulk method. Just gonna roam. Whatever. Just going to go. Slept in some shelters. Got some soup, some free food. Pretty cool. Gets back on the bus. No problem.
So
I don't know if
did I miss anything else, guys? Like, is there anything that you wanted to add to the rather thorough plot summary I gave?
I did have
my last note was, he's back. God damn it, this movie is so slow.
This movie's 88 minutes. It could have been 44, and nobody would have missed anything.
It took forever. I felt like I was sitting there forever while I was watching this thing.
Now, based on Jonathan's...
For nearly half an hour, Jacob doesn't say anything.
Based on Jonathan's Facebook comment about the whitefish, I was like, okay, what are they going to name the deceased wife before she's deceased? I'm like, I bet her name is either Rebecca or Rachel, right? Yeah, and so throughout the whole movie, I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. At the end, there goes Jacob. This is at the end of the movie. We actually find out her name. And he's like at the grave sites and he's pulling up grass. Actually, before he's pulling up grass, he's like touching all the gravestones. And there is Ruth. I'm like, God damn it. I was so close. If I just kept thinking stereotypically, I would have gotten Ruth at some point. But I didn't, okay? Rebecca and Rachel were not the names. But by the way, if he does leave right after they all get shot, doesn't like his sister and like his mom, they're taking care of all the arrangements? Like, that's a really dick move to do. Like, your family's dead.
I imagine that it happened after the funeral.
See, I didn't picture that. I just assumed that.
The mom's, or he says at some point, like after she was barely cold or in the ground or something like that.
No, he said barely cold, which would indicate
cold.
That would indicate that she was not buried yet.
Right.
No, not necessarily. I think you're being a little too. My understanding was that he's in a full suit when he decides to leave. I thought that what had happened was he had gone to the funeral because he's wearing a full suit.
But he's always wearing a suit. He's always teaching, right? Every scene we see him, he's always wearing a suit until he's sleeping on the side of the road. So,
and even then, he's wearing most of a suit.
Yeah, so okay, let's assume that he went through the funeral. He didn't actually make his family take care of all of that stuff because that would be kind of terrible. But yeah, so this movie. Okay, here's the thing: this movie didn't suck by a technical aspect at all. The sound was good. It was shot well. It was laughably bad with the lip syncing. It's kind of ludicrous to think that Toni Braxton. It's not like they even bothered to ask her to sing a little bit worse than she could sing to like kind of make it believable that she is in a competition. She's singing like Toni Braxton, okay? So like she should win every year because she's like quietly singing to herself. You're like, oh, that could do really well, on the charts. So like that's kind of unfair at that point. You're right about the whole Jacob thing where he decides to sing with them. Never explained to us that's going to happen. It looks like Jacob's going to the bathroom or something, and he's like, oh, I'm just going to sing right now. I'm just going to stand here. I'm not wearing the uniform, but like I'm just going to sing. And how is he even eligible to sing? Because he lives at the church? Like I mean, like
the rules for this competition are loose at Fast IX.
and then the four judges who were just like sitting there. There's like I think 3 old men and 1 old lady with a hat. Got to have a hat. It was like, okay, all right. Just the competition aspect was not exploited. I think not enough. I wanted more competition because Brother Day could have been much more ferocious. Because like Toni Braxton, like I got to go take care of my son. Mike's dropping him off. So then Brother Day lets her go. We never see Mike again after that, by the way. Do they share custody, or does Mike like say, you know what, drop Asher off, and he leaves for 2 fucking months? We never see him again. What happened to Mike? What happened to Mike?
Mike had to go on a 2-month tour. What's not explained is that Mike is a rival gospel singer, but he's hit the big circuit, and he's in Montgomery, Alabama, for the entire 2 months. And
Mike, the first time we meet him, he's trying to set up Toni Braxton on a date, which is even weirder. I'm like, because he shows up with his. Go ahead.
With his girlfriend, fiance, wife, whatever. When that happened, I honestly, maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention, but as I was watching, I was thinking, all right, is this her ex-husband, or is he somehow related to her? Is this her brother? What's going on? Because if it is her ex-husband, it's really weird that he's trying to set her up on a date, particularly when you find out eventually that the reason they got divorced is because she cheated on him.
Not only that, but like his new woman is with him. Like they both step out of the car. They drop off Asher. He's starting to talk about, hey, can I talk to you about something? I think Linda's her name. She goes right back into the car. And like just apparently she knows what's going to happen. She's like, well, fuck this. I did not approve of this, Mike. Mike is like trying to tell Nina to meet somebody that he knows. And like Nina's like, no, I don't think that's a good idea. And I'm like, okay, they must be really cool with each other. That this is what they're doing for each other. Like, let me set you up on a date. Yeah. But it does really set some really odd things. And then I was doing some like high school genetic stuff. I'm like, wait a second. Asher's got green eyes. The mom and dad have brown eyes. Recessive. Okay. So this is like a 1 in 4 kind of kid. Good for him. He's special. Good old Asher with the green eyes. So he shouldn't have green eyes 3/4 of the time. So he shouldn't have them. Punnett squares, everybody. Punnett squares.
You know you're bored if you're doing Punnett squares in the middle of a movie.
I also seriously, when they said don't Matthew 25 me, I had in my notes this urge to second screen rising because I'm like, what the fuck is it? I hope they tell us. And then it turns.
To me, it was hysterical that she's all indignant about being Matthew 25, and it's clear later that she had no idea what Matthew 25 said because she had to look it up.
I assumed that she wanted to be sure that's what it was. That's what I thought it was. Like, just a double check.
Right. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's ass. What? What the hell?
It's like, this says give shelter to everyone. Great. Damn it.
Here's the thing. So, again, Netflix predicted that all 3 of us would enjoy this movie. It had greater than 4 stars for me. I would say at best I would give this 2. I didn't hate it so much to give it 1. I reserve that kind of hate for things like Rock and Roll Frankenstein. This was nowhere near Rock and Roll Frankenstein level. I didn't like it, but I didn't hate it. So I'd probably give it, 2, because I can't give it a 2.5, right? I don't even, like, it's almost neutral. I could almost give this a 3, but I lean a little bit on the negative side. What about you guys? How did you feel by the time the movie was over?
I mean, I don't want to give it anything more. Like, I couldn't give it any more than a 2, but I don't even want to give it a 2. Like, it was acceptable. Like, I wish there were just like a button for that on Netflix. It still was acceptable,
serviceable.
Like, yeah.
Not as long as some other movies. like that's your review. This was a movie. It was not as long as other movies.
It did happen.
That's pretty much it. Like, it's much funnier if you watch it in the context of, like, if it had opened with Toni Braxton as herself, this movie would have been hilarious. But yeah,
because Toni Braxton PI. That's what she's like. She's got her. she only uses that notepad for just checking out this guy because I think the kid brings it up later, and that's the only thing that's still in the notepad, which is just fine. For the PWP profile I have on Netflix, I have to give this a 1 because it's not shitty enough for Netflix to recommend movies based on it. It's not good enough that I'm like, okay, it's going to change how I feel about it. It's just so decent. It's so you're right. Hallmark is the right. It's so middle of the road. Yeah, it's. I mean, the biggest criticism I have of the movie is it's a little slow. I mean, like it could be about 60 minutes max.
Well, and part of that is it's made for TV, so they have to stretch it for those commercial breaks. Like that.
Super stretched out.
I just wish they had increased the emotional stakes. When you have chosen to make one of your characters mute for nearly half an hour, where this character is unable to express, apart from physical acting, the kind of torment they're going through and the kind of crisis of faith they're going through, then it just seems like he was feeling kind of crappy and then eventually felt better. Like there's no moment in this movie where you feel like there's the epiphany, right, that Jacob experiences where he is able to reconcile his faith, which is absolutely necessary for this movie to work. And there's no moment in the movie that you can point to where you say, this is it. This is the emotional pivot of this film. Yeah, and I say that as someone who's not a person of faith.
It's true. Like he just has this like slow progression, and then at the end, like that's the problem with the ending, is you're like, what just happened? Is he now Baptist or Methodist? What were they? Methodist.
There's a difference, Eric. Look.
I understand.
Baptist dunk, Methodist sprinkle. Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah, and like that's the thing. Is like the ending. You're just sitting there going, well, what just? So he's back, and now what are we doing? Is he Jewish again?
Yeah.
Is he?
Yeah, that was is just very unsatisfactory in that. I just couldn't.
Like I would have even been like happy with it if they were like, oh, boom, he's converted to Christianity now, and that's it. Like that's where we're leaving this movie. But
he now believes in Jesus. It just
just something.
He's like, I really listened to the lyrics of "What a Friend We Have in Jesus," and I got it.
He's like, that's what I was missing. The New Testament. Damn it! Right. I didn't know there's a sequel to this. I should have read it. I was in that caretaker room for a while, and I was taking a look at it. We never see him reading the Bible, by the way, so that doesn't make any sense. And I'm also hoping he took a goddamn airplane. Sorry for my language there. When he went back to Alabama, because you're not going to take a 3-day bus ride back to Alabama from Brooklyn, because that's got to suck. Okay, that has to suck. There's no way, unless like he's like, I'm not paying for that. That's cool. Whatever, man. Whatever you want to do, but do not take that ride. No, wait a second now. That is not why I said what I said. What I was talking about, the fact that this guy really shouldn't do this, okay? Because this is a terrible thing. A bus ride sucks. That's my whole thing.
Like I said, that's where the end of the movie, where the timelines fall apart, right? Because he leaves, presumably it takes him several days to get back to Brooklyn. And then presumably he stays in Brooklyn for a few days before he decides to come back. And then assuming that he does take the bus, it's going to take a few more days. So we're talking like 2 weeks, maybe a week and a half, something like that, from the point where he leaves to the point where he comes back. And so we have to assume that means the family waits a week and a half before they think, what was up with that Jacob guy? Maybe we should look up some info on him.
They're obviously like, listen, Asher, dude, you want corn? Look, make you some fucking corn. Corn, here's some more corn. Just shut up. You want? Oh, good, Uncle Mo. Yeah, your underwear. We got your underwear thing, and there's your rabbit. Would you just shut up? That's what's going on for the 5 days between events that they cut out. Clearly, this movie could have been a lot longer. Maybe we should have seen some of that, or maybe we should have seen some of their like struggle about this concept of searching for this guy, because it's not that easy to find this man in Brooklyn.
Not true. It's incredibly easy if you go to search.htm.
Search.htm is the best. It kicks Google's ass. Oh, it did put the search result as 4.
But
So
yeah, no,
again,
still search result number 4 though. Like, let's not give
Well,
it
it's
too
only
much.
because there were not enough incoming links to that story about the Jewish family being slaughtered on the bus.
well, the other thing is, why the hell are words like coach, basketball, carpenter?
What are you doing
Why the
in that
hell?
article?
Why would they be in that art? Exactly. Like for SEO, that's just shit. Like unless somebody like decided for metadata purposes, at the end they just wrote all this stuff. They're like,
No,
okay,
you can tell that in the article, the first line is Jacob, the Jewish basketball playing carpenter, suffered a terrible tragedy this week when his entire family was gunned down on the bus.
I will believe that was in the slug of the URL. It's going to say all of those words. If you went to whatever news site this was in Brooklyn, let's call it the Brooklyn Chronicle that covers murders.com/
in the Jewish community. So here's the thing: is that I think we all agree this movie was very bland. It was not necessarily effective. It could have been better. You could have made a movie based on this premise that would have had a true emotional impact. As it stands, this is something that simulates a movie that would have an emotional impact without actually achieving it itself.
Or you could
Is that safe to say?
You could have mixed in some classic, competition elements. Just make this Bring It On for gospel choirs. I would.
In which case, you don't need Jacob at all. Jacob.
Well, he's got to write the song, right? He's really important that he writes the song, defends the church, acts as a stepdad. He's relatively important.
Yeah.
That is also an issue, right? That there is an underlying, almost racist kind of concept here, where you have the white savior of the black church. That this is the guy who fights off the white rednecks who want to vandalize the church, and the one who is successful in fighting them off is the white guy. There's a problem.
Oh, that's right.
Too.
That's because Uncle Mo had to go to his class reunion on the same night the rednecks fucking show up, and Mo's like, "I'm really upset that I actually went to class reunion of all the nights." It's like, fucking Mo, what the hell? Why were you not across the way to take care of this shit? Now Jacob is the hero. And by the way, like you had mentioned before, the cops don't bring him in because, again, you said rural Alabama. I'm assuming that's normal for there. They're like, the pastor, I'm sure Brother Day or whoever the hell showed up is like, nah, he's cool. Like, all right, end.
Here's the super sad thing. If Uncle Mo had not gone to his reunion and Uncle Mo had been there to intervene when the rednecks were vandalizing the church, Uncle Mo most certainly would have been taken into the police station to be talked to and not let off the hook, because that's the way things work. That's the really sad part. Thank goodness that didn't happen in the story, because the slightly racist kind of undertones that were going on in elements of this movie would have become overtones at that point.
It's very important that we realize that in a movie like this, the lesson to learn is that a once mute stranger, a drifter, who comes to town, who sleeps by your church, refuses to talk for several weeks, takes your food, hides, and never gives you his full story, that person is to be trusted implicitly after he shoots another person in the leg. You must listen to that person, because that's all the logical sense.
Just leave a gun with that guy because he's got your back.
Yeah, of course. That's Jacob.
Yeah,
that's our Jacob. Yeah. Good old Sam.
Fortunately, I have already picked what our movie is for next week, because it's my turn.
What was that again? Yeah, it's your turn.
Feng Shui.
Oh, right.
Oh, Feng Shui. That's right.
Yeah, FENGSHUI. Feng Shui. Apparently, it's a story of supernatural revenge when a character employs an evil feng shui master in tormenting his family because he had developed a crush on his stepsister.
I can't wait for this scene.
Okay.
Go ahead, Eric.
Where are you reading your summary? Because the first line of the one I have is, when a boy's who's grown inappropriately fond of his stepsister.
Right. He grows inappropriately fond of his stepsister. His family shuns him for that. He then goes and seeks out an evil feng shui master to seek revenge upon his family. And then I guess the evil feng shui master comes in and moves a chair, and things go ape shit.
I can't wait for somebody to wake up and be like, wait, why is all this shit under my bed? That's not good for my chi. You know, it has to have, like, somebody's going to notice that there's like another box there. And then like
hey,
the
honey,
living
did you move the bed so that the head of the bed faces west now?
and call me nuts. And we haven't even watched the movie yet. But if you walked out of your bedroom and like your furniture was rearranged, wouldn't you be like, what the fuck? And they're like, I'm gonna put it back. Or you're like, I like it better this way. Then shit happens to you. You're like, maybe I should put it back. But like, you should kind of be weirded out by this.
I know I should probably move the chair back, what with the red mist slowly drifting through the doorway, but I kind of like where it is in the corner now, so I'm going to leave it there.
As the evil feng shui guy is doing this, he's making sure that it's still aesthetically pleasing. Good. I'm very happy about this.
These are all based on presumptions we have of this movie, having not watched it yet. It may turn out that the movie is... First of all, I suspect it's going to be incredibly boring. It's going to be awful and boring.
I hope we have montages of arrangement. I can't wait. We're just like...
The fact that we already have described a movie that would actually be entertaining probably means we should make our version of feng shui. Because I guarantee it would be more interesting than whatever it is we're about to watch for next week.
That's a challenge.
Also, I've got to thank Eric, even though I'd already seen it. I'm glad that you tweeted it to us, the Wrestling Isn't Wrestling video. Did you watch that, Eric?
I did. And that's why, and I found it interesting because I don't watch wrestling. So,
sure.
You know, I mean, I understood the point he was making before the actual video. Like, I understand what wrestling is and why people watch it. But yeah, I thought it was really entertaining. Just, you know, breaking down the kind of historic plot line over, it was pretty long. It was 20 minutes or something like that?
26 minutes, something like that. Did you see it, Ayaz?
Yeah, I watched it. I didn't realize that was the video that Eric had tweeted out. I meant to click it, but I had seen it independently of the tweet. And I thought it was done very well. It's done by Max Landis. If you guys haven't watched it, definitely give it a look. It's called Wrestling Isn't Wrestling. You'll easily find it on YouTube. Since he's the son of John Landis, the cameos are incredible in this video. It explains the whole thing about what the hell pro wrestling is and why people watch it, what makes it mean anything. And I watch pro wrestling, and I know Jonathan does. And I wanted to see, like, would this be insulting? Is this ridiculous? What's the take on this? And it was actually a very good take on why people watch a show like this. The concept
specifically following the career of Triple H, who started off with a terrible gimmick in the 90s, and now is the COO of WWE, and one of the people who calls the shots on how the program unfolds. So what's interesting is that they mostly deal with the kayfabe side of Triple H's story. They mostly deal with the forward-facing, here's what the audience is told side, and very little of the backstage elements. And there are a lot of things that are skipped over, like Triple H's long history of crippling injuries, particularly his quadriceps. He has torn those suckers multiple times and yet come back from that. I personally don't find Triple H to be a very entertaining in-ring performer, but I respect the hell out of the fact that he was completely dedicated to the business, to this industry. And so it's really an interesting take on it. And the thing that I love about this video is they use actresses to play all the wrestlers, with the exception of Chyna, who's played by a guy.
Right.
But they use actresses to play all the wrestlers, and they lip sync to what's the guy's name again? The
Max Landis.
Max. They lip sync to Max's narration. So Max is saying, Triple H says to Shawn Michaels, and then you see the actress lip sync to Max, whatever it is. And the actresses, you know, they can't act with their voices. They're acting with their body and their facial expressions, and they are amazing. The interactions between Triple H and Shawn Michaels in particular,
Hilarious.
they are incredibly funny. Highly recommended.
It was cool because I mean, it made me actually want to go back and watch that because I'm like, that's a pretty cool story. I'd like to see that. But then I'm also like, but that's like 5 years worth of content.
No, not 5 years. No, more than 5 years.
20? Yeah. I mean,
well, yeah,
because you know.
Well, I mean, if I were just to actually watch them.
Yeah, because you're going all the way back to the beginning of the Attitude Era, so all the way back to the Montreal Screwjob era. So that's 96, and then up to or 97, and then up to modern day. That's a lot of catching up to do. But you know, there are a lot of things that were skipped over. There are a lot of tragedies that happened in wrestling over that course of years that involves many of the players that are mentioned within that particular video. But obviously that wasn't the focus of the narrative. The focus was more about the journey of this character from the gimmick to being the symbol of the corporation, going from being a kind of the rebel to the establishment. And it's told really, really well. And like I said, the actresses who play the various wrestlers do a phenomenal job. Highly recommended.
Yeah, I wish the WWE Network would take notice of this and kind of like have these kind of recap things about each character. So I remember like when I used to read comic books, Marvel introduced this little like one page, basically a page to catch you up on everything you need to know about the next stuff you're about to read. Because yes, we get a lot of recaps and you get like, this is what happened last week and they tell you over and over again. But to have a full understanding of the character, it'd be kind of neat to have that every now and then. They have that whole network thing. If they had like 10-minute videos of like, here's everything you need to know about Sheamus and like why he's important, why he's interesting, like, and here's why it is. And I'm not talking about like an in-depth history. You can be revisionist. You have full control of the library. You can do whatever you want. But yeah, I think the comedy element of wrestling isn't wrestling. The way it's done is, even if you don't care about pro wrestling, it's very funny just because somebody's explaining to you how this person enjoys this show. It could easily be done about Game of Thrones. Absolutely the same. If like, let's go through a character's arc, and here's how this worked. It's just, you know, wrestling's just got a very odd history in general because it's this concept of faking a fight so people will pay money, and we can get more money if we can have more fights. So let's keep this up and let's not tell anybody that it's just a big show. But now we all agree that it's a show, but we'll still invite you over and you can boo us. Could you imagine if you're watching like a television show and the audience basically decided to rebel against the storyline that was happening on television? They're like, fuck no, Joey can't do that on Friends. No, he can't. And they start screaming. Like, you suck. You can't do that on any other show or like a play. If you watch a play and you're like, no, wait, you're Ted from How I Met Your Mother. You can't play another character right now. I'm going to boo you. Like, so it's got this very unique, bizarre history that's still hanging around. So it's a very hard thing to explain.
Yeah. Anyway. I mean, it's the only industry where you can have the audience reaction be so strong as to change the direction of the plot. And sometimes it happens within the confines of a match, not even a full episode, but just a single match. Like there was the WrestleMania match between The Rock and Hulk Hogan that happened several years ago now. And at the time, Hogan was being booked as a heel. He was the bad guy. The Rock was being booked as a babyface. He was the good guy. And as the match happened, when Hogan came out, the crowd went bonkers because they genuinely loved Hulk Hogan. They loved the fact that this was a link to their childhood. This was a guy they watched when they were little kids. It didn't matter that he was a bad guy now. They loved him. And they still loved The Rock too, but they weren't going to, just boo Hogan and cheer The Rock. So as the match unfolds, Hogan turns from heel to babyface. The Rock actually ends up going a little heelish in that one match. And that wasn't necessarily planned from the beginning. That might have been something that actually changed as the audience was reacting. And meanwhile, you got people backstage watching and saying, we got to change the booking of this match. and then they would communicate to the referee. The referee would get the message and communicate to the superstars saying, guys, we have to address the fact that the crowd is siding one way as opposed to the way we expected them to. Let's take advantage of that rather than just deny that it's happening. Now, in the history of WWE, there have been way more times that they have just denied crowd reaction than gone with it. But that's one where they actually did go with it. And it ended up being one of the biggest matches at that WrestleMania. I mean, that was like one of the ones people talked about because it was such an emotional moment for the audience.
That was back in WrestleMania 18, if you're keeping count. So that's 13 years ago. So there you go. Anyway, I think this is our new night. We shot on a Wednesday at 8:30 on Eastern time. Did everybody enjoy this time? Anybody?
I did.
Hate this?
Totally.
Eric?
Yeah.
I think we enjoyed it enough to go
way over.
Than we
We're
usually
a
do.
little long.
Yeah, we're used to like going till like midnight. So we're not going to talk till midnight. I think we should look into the future. What's the movie we're watching again? We're watching
Feng Shui.
Feng Shui. I bet you I will be able to watch 12 minutes of it before I'm like, fuck this, and go to something else. Anybody else want to put down their number?
I'll go 25.
25.
Yeah, I'll say about 20 probably.
All right, good. That means I did flirt with the idea of doing 0 today. Just like, I'm just going to run it while I'm at work. Fuck it. This movie, by the way, Twist of Faith, you could watch during a work day. It's totally safe for work, and it's fucking slow.
Yeah.
You could go get lunch.
If your workplace approves of an entire family being gunned down on a bus, feel free.
It's not that. It's like 10 seconds of the movie, okay? Like, that's the other thing about this movie that sucks.
They're not gunned down in slow motion during the hour and 28 duration.
Hey, here's the other thing, by the way. The movie starts off, like you were saying, like in the first 5 or 10 minutes, this happens. There's a huge plot point. And then like nothing happens for like 20 fucking minutes. It's
So
like
you can turn to your boss and say, "Hey, boss, in the first 5 minutes of the movie I'm about to watch, an entire family is gunned down, but after that it's all okay." So
yeah, so like don't ever watch like a Batman movie where his parents are gunned down like every fucking time. Anyway, this show is done on the GFQ network. I never promote that enough, so I'm saying it now. So if you want to have a look at the archives, and I think Eric Sandine is working on finding the old episodes. So if you want to listen to the episode where we were horrified by Rock and Roll Frankenstein, you will soon be able to find that easily. You can find it on archive.org, but it's very hard to find.
And if you can't find it, don't worry, because Ayaz has apparently promised that on episode 150 we'll watch it again.
I asked that we did it. I didn't say that we have to do it, and I still am looking for clearance from you guys to actually agree to do this, because it's a fucking terrible idea. So we might do a special where we rewatch and release with our commentary live, because nobody's taking down that video.
It's not.
I can't put that episode up.
It's not on Netflix anymore.
Oh no, we're gonna have to find it some other way.
We might have to get a physical copy of this.
Oh God.
Oh my God. Anyway, we'll find out what happens.
That's for episode 150, and at the rate we record, that's going to be in like 6 years. So
yes, but anyway, we shoot this show live on Wednesdays now at 8:30 Eastern. So we have a chat room, which we should join sometime. I think Eric's in there.
There's people. I'm in there.
Eric's in there, so he's taking all your questions, and so there you go. Let's look to the next episode, shall we? The future. Next time on Podcast Without Pretense.
I think this chair would go better over there.
I really shouldn't have had that burrito before the show. I gotta go.
It's not yellow number 5, but something like that.